Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Mark Guberti. Hello and welcome. I am your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I am very excited about this show. We are going to discuss how to generate more sales with our guest, Anthony Iannarino. Anthony is the best-selling author of the only sales guide you'll ever need. That is the name of the book. That's how good it is. The name really stands by what you're going to get from that book. So he hosts a daily show on his YouTube channel where he empowers his audience with the knowledge they need to become successful, and he's a public speaker. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Anthony to the show. Thanks for stopping by, Anthony.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I love having guests like you because you have such great expertise. You've been in it for such a long time, but with all these people who are doing all of their different things, I always like to start by asking what actually got them into it. So I'm curious of what actually got you started. I know you've described yourself as the accidental salesperson. So what exactly made you start on this journey to teaching others how to make more sales?
Oh, that part of the journey started later. I mean, the early part for me was fronting a hair metal band, moving to LA, and then having a manager who recognized that as a non-salesperson, I was winning more deals than the salespeople in our branch. And he forced me into outside sales against my will, literally threatening to fire me anyway if I didn't cut my hair and go into outside sales. And I did it just so I could remain in LA and keep playing music at night. But I had a knack for it since I was a kid, and I didn't recognize that until recently that I'd really started selling probably at about 14 or 15 years old. And I didn't want to be a salesperson because I thought it was something that made you manipulative and pushy and self-oriented and things that I thought were negative attributes for human beings to possess. But once I got into it and I realized it was about actually helping other people get results they can't get without you, then it became a really exciting field for me because you go in and you solve big problems that people haven't been able to solve before you showed up. So that's what got me into it. And I grew a family business in about 2007, 2008. I started having people ask me to help them with their business. And they started asking me to coach and to speak and do other things like that.
So based on what you've been telling us so far, it's pretty obvious that you've put in a lot of work to achieve your success. And in your book, you talk about how self-discipline is critical for all 17 elements of sales success. I feel like self-discipline is vital in all areas of life, but it is such a hard skill to develop. So how do you advise building self-discipline?
There's a lot of things that you can do, but I think the probably the best advice to give someone is to pick one area. Just pick one area where you really want to develop your discipline. And if I could pick one for your listeners, it would be to set the alarm and get up earlier in the morning. And if you can get up early, like 5 o'clock in the morning, you're getting 2 extra hours a day over many of your peers. And if you can get that discipline where you no longer hit the snooze button 3 times, which is 27 minutes if you leave the default on your snooze, it's normally 9 minutes. I have no idea why, because 10 would be too long maybe. But people hit it 3 times and they're giving up a half hour. And with that half hour, you could do so many things. You could write a blog post. You could go to the gym. You could respond to all your emails. You could write a marketing campaign. I mean, there's tons of things you could do with a half hour. But if you get that discipline, then the other ones seem to just fall easier. I think it's the self-control over the physical body and understanding that most of the time when we're not disciplined, it's because we're choosing to prefer comfort over what we really want. And that's what that 9 minutes really signifies. That 9 minutes is 9 minutes in your warm bed where you're asleep and you don't have to do anything. And it's not really worth trading for all the things that you could do. You know, look, if you get up at 6:30 and you get up an hour and a half earlier every single day, you're talking about hundreds of hours a year to put towards what you really want, whatever that might be. And if you're an entrepreneur or a small business person, you should put that hour and a half towards taking care of your physical health and then taking care of marketing and selling, because that's what should come first in your business. That's really the discipline of growing a business.
And I would like to point out, like when you set that, you hit the snooze button, you're actually hurting yourself in terms of sleep, because you have like this 90-minute sleep cycle, and you try and get some extra sleep, and then the alarm continuously wakes you up. So you actually feel more tired if you keep on hitting snooze and snooze, because it constantly disrupts your sleep cycle. So as Anthony said before, it is better to get up earlier, not just to not let the comfort win, but you're also going to feel more tired with that approach of getting those extra 9 minutes, because it's not substantial enough in order to get the amount of sleep that you need. So I'd like to shift gears here and talk about a big hurdle that you had to face, because with any type of big pursuit, there are going to be big hurdles. So what was the biggest hurdle that got in between you and making more sales?
I got to think about that. I mean, I have never, the reason this is a tougher question for me is because I've never given adversity a negative frame. I've never looked at adversity and thought, this is some unconquerable obstacle. I've always looked at it as, okay, here's something else I have to do. I mean, I've had obstacles of having poor leaders as a salesperson who didn't know how to help me help them grow their business. And I've had all of the normal things that someone can have. I've had a brain surgery where I lost a piece of my right front temporal lobe when I was 25. I had a dad abandon the family at 7. But I mean, all of these things shaped me. So I tend to have a positive frame on all of the adversity. So anything that was adverse ended up being super beneficial for me, and it made me stronger. So I've never looked at it through any kind of a negative lens. I mean, coming back from California, having the brain surgery, going to work in the family business, having the sales leader there tell me that I couldn't have any of the companies that were all high profile, high value targets in the territory, and then having to sit down with the phone book and dial literally thousands of numbers to build a business. But all of those things, you know, we have a choice. When you look at something like this, you can say, this was a negative obstacle that I had to overcome, or this was a positive opportunity and it made me better. So a sales leader taking all the leads away and saying, you don't get any of these, and then me having to go to the phone book made me a much better cold caller. And eventually it allowed me to find deals that no one else could find, because they were looking at names that they knew and that they recognized. And I found things that you would never, ever find, except to be diligent enough to go through the white pages, which was, there was a business section in the phone book at the time, literally letter by letter, and driving through that. And ultimately I had more sales than the sales manager, and then I had more sales than the rest of the sales force, specifically because she threw that challenge at me, and then I responded to it. So I would say I would challenge your listeners, you know, whatever you have as adversity, it's really an opportunity to grow. And if you haven't framed it that way, that's just a choice of frames. A lot of people would put a negative frame on that, and at the time it doesn't necessarily feel good, but that's when you have to figure it out. And human resourcefulness and initiative and all of the attributes that are in the book are what allow you to be great and to do good work and meaningful, purposeful work and make a difference.
So you mentioned how most people have that negative frame when it comes to adversity, which I completely agree with. But you seem to have an optimistic frame consistently, and you say it's one of these important things to have in the mindset of a successful salesperson. So how do you recommend keeping your optimism and building upon it, even when there are things that happen to you where people, they would understand if you have a negative frame, but you choose not to?
You know, in the book, there's a couple exercises that I think are really important for people to do. And I've got a mastermind coaching group around the book on Facebook right now. And I ask people to do this exercise, which is to go on a negativity fast, which means you have to turn off a lot of your friends and family right now, because there's still such a political environment since Trump won the presidency. And there's a lot of upset people who really are just complaining. on Facebook is really what they're doing. They didn't get what they wanted, so they're complaining. What they're doing isn't making a difference. It's just they've decided to say, I'm going to have a negative frame about this. And now I'm going to just keep complaining every day about I didn't get what I want. And you have to remove that from your life. You have to remove, and this was true of whoever the president was. Half of the country didn't get the president that they wanted. So that's just typically how it works here. But you have to shut off the news. You have to shut off every source of negativity. You have to distance yourself from friends and sometimes family members who are super negative. And you've got to take enough time that you can get all of the negativity out of your mental state and replace it with something better. What I did probably just over 10 years ago is I took all news sources away. Facebook wasn't as big as it is now, so it wasn't as big of a problem then. And I just started pouring in good things. So instead of taking in any of the news channels, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, anything like that, I would take in Anthony Robbins or Stephen Covey or Les Brown or Brian Tracy or Zig Ziglar. And I just filled my head constantly with positive, optimistic, empowering stuff. And I decided to do that for 30 days. But after 30 days, I decided to do it for another 30 days because I liked it so much. And then I decided just to keep doing it. And if you can go about 60 days removing all the sources of negativity and just taking in positive, you can start to change your mind and start changing your frame. It's almost like a glass of water, Mark. So the glass of water is dirty, and you know that's what your mindset is like because of all the negativity. And just imagine like putting in a fire hose and blasting out all the negativity with positivity, and then you've got a glass that's full of a clear, crisp, much better source of nutrition. And that's really what you have to do. You have to blast it out. The second thing I would recommend is if you find yourself with a really negative mindset and you want to change it, do two other things. Keep a gratitude journal. So just get up every day and write down what you're grateful for or what you should be grateful for. And then go volunteer at a homeless shelter to feed people, because it's impossible for you to help other people and feel sorry for yourself at the same time. Those two ideas are in such great conflict that when you're actually making a difference for other people who need your help, you can't feel bad about yourself, and you can work it out that way.
So you mentioned optimism as one of the 17 key elements for generating a lot of sales and becoming successful. And in your book, you also refer to resourcefulness as the linchpin element of the sales mindset, as it fuels our creativity and imagination. So how do you recommend that we build our resourcefulness and use it to get more customers?
The thing about resourcefulness, Mark, is that a lot of people have what's called learned helplessness. They've decided that because they don't know something or they don't know how to do something, that they can't do something. And they can do it. They're just not applying their creativity and their imagination. And what happens, and you're a young guy, what happens when you're a young person is you go to school and they start to teach you to conform to what other people believe. And what this is they help you lower the bar so that you settle for something less than you can be. But human resourcefulness is the linchpin attribute, specifically because given a long enough timeline, human beings solve every problem that's put in front of us. Right now, we're working on cancer. We're going to solve cancer. We're going to solve aging. Aging is going to be much different because we're working on it right now. We've put people on the moon. We have craft right now on Mars. We're going to send more. We're going to send humans to Mars soon. Every single problem that we have starts with the fact that somebody believes it's a solvable problem and that there's an answer to it. And we're really good at riddles and puzzles. And that's one of the things that makes the neocortex in our brain so interesting, is we've got this 6-layer massive neocortex that really is the greatest problem-solving computer in the known universe. And you have to apply it to your sales challenges. So this person's not calling me back. Okay, figure out what to do to change your message. This person has a problem that we haven't developed a solution for. Okay, figure out what do I do to solve that problem. And all of the problems that we have as human beings are solvable problems, and given a long enough timeline, we'll solve them. But it means that we have to apply our creativity and resourcefulness, which means we ideate, we brainstorm, we get groups of smart people together, we get a whiteboard, we start figuring out what our choices are, and we start taking action until we figure out what works. And there's a reason that that chapter comes before initiative and persistence, because you also have to look at a problem, decide you're going to solve it, and start taking action. And then you have to persist long enough to solve it. But if you do those things, you get a different outcome.
So you mentioned about the different challenges that salespeople face. And one of the challenges that I see a lot of people face is they'll know the product very well. They'll know how to hold up a strong conversation, but when it comes to the close, they're a little stuck. They don't know exactly how to get their prospect to take action. So this is basically a shift from the mindset now to how exactly do we get sales once we have this mindset. So how do you suggest crafting a strong close in order to get those sales?
I think you use very natural language. If you have a yellow How to Close for Dummies book, you throw it away because you don't want to do anything that sounds hokey or fake or that's going to subtract from the relationship or violate trust. So you just ask directly. You say, Mark, I think that we know enough to get started. If there's nothing else you need from me now, I'd love to ask you for your business, and I'd love to give you a contract so we could begin to put this in motion. That's it. I mean, you just ask directly. There's not a better way to do it than to just be a human being and ask for what you need to help somebody else get the results that they say they need. I wouldn't do any kind of hokey, tie down, any tricks, any kind of close that has a name, I think is not going to serve you. It's just going to violate trust.
So the strong closing is one that builds trust and honesty as compared to doing these maneuvers in order to feel like you've optimized their closing. But some people are on the opposite side of the coin where they see the prospect, they know what to say, but they don't know how to begin the conversation. So if you had to promote something to a prospect, how would you start the introduction that leads into the conversation?
Introducing a product?
Yes, how would you create that conversation where someone just picks up the phone?
Oh, that's a cold call. A cold call is different. I mean, a cold call, you're asking for a commitment, but the commitment you want is time. So you'd want to pick up the phone and say, hey, Mark, it's Anthony Iannarino, and I'm with a company called Transformation Incorporated, and we help entrepreneurs like yours build your business. And I'm calling you today to ask you for 20 minutes because I want to give you a very high-level executive briefing on the 4 major challenges that entrepreneurs are struggling with right now in growing their business. Some of the questions that you're going to ask you and your team, and then some of the ideas that might help you get through that. So even if we never do business together, I'm going to leave you with a deck and a set of questions you can use with your team. What do you look like Thursday for a 20-minute meet and greet where I'll share this executive briefing with you? I'll leave it with you, and then you'll know me, and if there's anything I can do for you in the future, I'd like you to think of me.
That's a good summary of cold calls. And I have to ask you, this is from the millennial standpoint, and more millennials are getting into business. So I feel like this would be an interesting question to hear your take on it. So in the modern era, I feel like people prefer to send emails and text and communicate via social media instead of conducting the cold calls. So do you believe people are making a grave mistake by communicating with prospects through email, social media, and text, but not incorporating cold calls?
Yeah, it's a major mistake, and the tide has now turned on that. And pretty much anyone who is in this space acknowledges that cold calling is still the fastest and most effective way to grow your business. But it's not the only way. And I am not a person who believes in mutually exclusive choices, especially when it comes to prospecting. So the phone is good. Text messaging is great. I personally won $1 million deal on LinkedIn through an InMail, and that works too. But I would tell you the avoidance of the phone is a big problem because inbound and the social selling channels don't create enough opportunities. And so a lot of people are opportunity starved. And I'll tell you, the millennials are way behind right now. So if you look at the statistics, they're making far less money than their parents or grandparents did at this age. And it's some of the feelings of, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to interrupt people. I want to make a lot of money, but I don't want to do the things that it takes to do that. And I want work-life balance. So I'm not going to make these level of commitments. And my experience is that over time, every generation decides that they want the same thing as earlier generations. And they decide to make trade-offs to say, you know what, I'll use the phone because it's more important that I take care of my family or that I grow my business or that I can send my kids to college. And then they start to do things that they said they weren't going to do. When I was your age, Mark, I would have never, ever imagined wearing a suit and tie. And now I love suits and ties. And, your values change over time as you realize that. But the millennial generation has grown up, now with the internet, and specifically since 2007, since Steve Jobs gave us the iPhone, we're never anywhere without the phone in our left hand, right? I mean, we're there with the phone all the time. And so I think the channels may be different, but the one thing that I don't think is going to change over time is that human beings are going to want to do business with other human beings. And here's what we know. The very best way to generate relationships and trust and to prove that you care is to have a presence and to be face-to-face. Probably the second most powerful way right now is video conference because you've got virtual face to virtual face. After that is probably the telephone because the telephone is synchronous. So you and I could speak to each other without a long gap that email provides. And then probably after that is something that you mentioned, Mark, that a lot of people don't yet get is that text messaging is a preferred form of communication over email because the person got it and it's a limited number of characters and that person can reply to you immediately without having to do very many things to make that communication happen. So I still think that over time, people are going to still prefer to do business with people that they can work with face-to-face, virtual face-to-face. And I think that email is not the best choice for having the most important conversations you have in your life. Face-to-face is far better. The phone is not the best, but it's still probably far better than most other choices.
At the end of each chapter in your book, you provide several action steps so readers can implement what they just learned. So, based on all the information from this episode and other information, if you were to meet with a random salesperson, and this is the first time you're meeting with this person, and this salesperson is just getting started out, what are the 3 action steps that you would give that person before any other action steps?
I would have them read the first chapter on self-discipline because it's really the cornerstone. If you get discipline, then all of the rest of them fall much easier. The second one I would have them read would be caring, because if you can get rid of your self-orientation and literally put yourself in your client's shoes and really be empathetic and understand what they want, why they want it, and how to help them, then you're going to look very different than a lot of other salespeople. And then the last thing I would say is chapter 9 on accountability. Understand that somebody buying from you is a decision for you to be a partner in getting an outcome. And if you own that outcome and you take responsibility for delivering it, you're going to position yourself to have lifetime clients. So I would start with those 3 above all else. And I know all 3 of those are mindset, not skill set. But I believe if I were to tell somebody who's just starting out, here's how to think about this. Who you are matters more than what you do. So if you're a person that cares deeply, that takes care of all of the details, they're buttoned up, they help you produce the results, they feel like they're accountable for that, you're going to position yourself to be a better who, and then you can learn the what. You can learn how to make a cold call. You can learn how to ask for the business. All those things can come to you very easy. But if you're not the kind of person that people know, like, and trust and who can create value, it's a very hard game.
I believe that habits form a very big part of our life, and you talked a lot about the mindset, which I believe is definitely more important than knowing how to do something, because if you have the knowledge but you don't have the desire, then it's not going to happen. The mindset is more important, but you have the mindset all figured out, and now you're cranking out sales left and right. So I do believe that habits are important. Now I was wondering if you use any daily habits or weekly habits that basically keep you on track to increasing your sales. Like, are you doing a cold call a day or something like that that allows you to get more results?
I've got what I call a disciplines list. And it's a recommendation I make in that first chapter. I think disciplines are more important than goals. Disciplines say I'm going to do something because it's the right thing to do forever with no end. And so I get up early in the morning at 4:30. I write every day. I produce a YouTube video every day. That's marketing for me as a speaker and as somebody who helps companies transform. I meditate every day. I have a series of affirmations that I go through every day. I have an exercise regimen that I go through every day. I have lots of things that I do every day. Today is Saturday when we're recording this. I take all my inboxes. There's 5 of them in the email. I take all of them down to 0, replying to every single email that I've got. I do a review of last week's calendar, the future week's calendar, and I do all the prep work I have for every meeting coming up, and I make sure that I am solid on every commitment I promised from the week before. So I have a dozen routines, almost like a computer has routines that I just do again and again and again because it's the right thing to do forever. And I have a number of disciplines, and you're right, it's the habits that form us. And a goal is sort of like a temporary transformation. So I'm going to do this until I reach this goal. But habits are truly transformational because they're permanent states. You continue to do it forever, and that's what really allows you to transform and create the best version of yourself possible.
You've learned a lot of lessons throughout your journey, and you've shared a lot of great lessons with us throughout this episode, especially the one about self-discipline. But when you look back at your journey as a salesperson, what is the best lesson that you have learned along that journey?
Caring is a superpower. If you truly care about other people and you truly have your heart in helping other people get a better result, it is the greatest force on earth. And caring is I won't go so far. I guess I won't hold back. Love is the superpower. So somebody who's willing to give of themselves and not be self-oriented ends up having a lot of things that come to them because of the place that they've set themselves up. And so I would tell you, I think the what I learned from an early mentor was none of this is about you. It's all about the other person. And the sooner you figure that out, the easier things become. And it's true.
So you shared a really great insight about none of it being about you and all of it being about the other person. And that is a very powerful, inspirational quote. But is there one other awesome, inspirational quote that you can think of right now to share Breakthrough Success listeners?
I mean, I've got a ton of derivatives around that. I mean, in the book, I've said selling isn't something that you do to someone. It's something that you do for someone and with someone. And a lot of what I write is just really to help people understand you have to pull away from the self-orientation. You have to start looking at how you serve others. I would tell you, if I had to give you one other one, you have to decide whether you want your goals or whether you want your excuses. And you can't have both of them. They are mutually exclusive. You will either have your goals or you'll have your excuses. You just have to decide which one you like better.
I believe all of us would like our goals better, but excuses are easier. It's always just trying to go toward your work and push all of those excuses away. It has been such a pleasure to have you on my podcast. And before you go, I just want you to have the opportunity right now to tell all of my listeners where they can find you on the web.
The best place to find me on the web is thesalesblog.com. And I publish there daily, and also youtube.com/Iannarino, my last name. And I now publish there daily too.
Anthony, it has been such a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Keep crushing it and keep getting those sales.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
I thoroughly enjoyed that interview. Anthony touched upon a lot of great points for boosting sales. Before this conversation, I honestly thought that cold calling was dead, but now I see its potential for building upon a conversation. Anthony's book is truly the only sales guide you need to start crushing it, as it is filled with ways to bolster your mindset and includes numerous tactics to increase sales and optimize your sales pitch. If you forgot to take notes, then don't worry. We've got you covered with the show notes. Visit marketberry.com/E31 for those. You can ask your questions over there, which I'll be more than happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. Two ways you could do this are through marketberry.com/iTunes or marketberry.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markberry.com/retweet. This podcast is a production done by Mark Berry. For more insights, head on over to markberry.com.